Okay, so you know that feeling, right? Like
Yep.
when you're talking to someone,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like they're speaking a completely different language.
Mm-hmm.
We've all been there. It can be so frustrating.
Yeah.
Well, what if I told you? That's kind of what's happening. Like, people really are speaking different communication languages.
That's true.
And that's what we're going to dive into today. We're going to crack the code of communication styles and figure out why some conversations flow effortlessly while others feel like, I don't know, like you're trying to navigate a minefield blindfolded.
Exactly. And it's not about putting people in boxes
Huh.
or judging them for being different, but understanding these fundamental differences can seriously, like really seriously, upgrade your interactions with everyone in your life.
I love that. Upgrade your interactions. So to help us with this, we're going to be using what's called the DISA system. DISA stands for dominance, inducement, submission, and analytic ability. And don't worry, we'll unpack all that jargon in a minute.
Well,
But the cool thing about DISA is that each of these dimensions is represented by a color. You've got red, yellow, green, and blue. So it makes it super easy to visualize and remember.
yeah, and the research behind this is fascinating. It's not just some trendy personality quiz you find online.
All right.
It's a system that's been used for decades to analyze behavior patterns
Yeah.
and predict how people are going to interact in different situations.
So it's pretty powerful stuff. Think of this deep dive as your communication cheat sheet. By the end, you'll be able to decipher why people act the way they do and get your message across more effectively, no matter who you're dealing with.
It's like learning a secret code.
It is.
A secret code to unlock better relationships, both personally and professionally.
Because who hasn't had that frustrating conversation where you're just like, we are speaking two entirely different languages here.
Uh-huh, oh yeah.
So let's start with the basics. What exactly is this DISA system?
So basically, DISA looks at how individuals relate to their environment and how that shapes their behavior. It breaks down those behaviors into these 4 dimensions we talked about: dominance, inducement, submission, and analytic ability. Each dimension represents a different way of approaching the world, basically, and it influences everything from communication style to decision-making and even how someone handles conflict.
Oh, that's interesting. So it affects everything. Okay, so how do those dimensions then translate into the colors?
Well, each color represents a dominant dimension from that DISA system.
Mhm.
So, for example, reds, they're all about dominance.
Mhm.
Reds are driven, they're assertive, and really focused on results.
The go-getters.
Exactly. Yellows, on the other hand, they're high in inducement. They're like those social butterflies
Mm.
who thrive on connection and persuasion.
Okay, got it. So reds conquer, yellows connect. What about greens and blues?
So greens are driven by submission, which basically means they prioritize stability, harmony, and cooperation. They're kind of the peacemakers of the group.
The diplomats.
Yes, exactly. And then finally you have the blues. They're all about that analytic ability. They're the thinkers, the detail-oriented folks who value accuracy and logic above all else.
Data over everything. I love it. Okay, I love how visual this is.
Mm-hmm.
It is so much easier to remember, like red than dominance.
Right.
Okay, so let's paint a picture of each color. Give us those vivid details from the research that'll really make these personalities come to life, starting with reds, because, well, they probably wouldn't let us start anywhere else.
Yeah, that's probably true. Reds, the research describes reds as being like a shot glass.
A shot glass.
Yeah, their temper can flare up really quickly, but it also dissipates just as fast. They're not ones to hold grudges.
Oh, that's good.
They're very direct,
Yeah.
to the point, and impatient with anything that
Oh,
they
it's-
perceive as inefficient.
Like wasting time.
Exactly, like get to the point, let's go.
Okay, that makes total sense. I'm pretty sure my boss is a red.
Uh-huh.
Always focused on the bottom line. Hates small talk, just wants the results.
Yep, sounds like it.
Okay, now what about those sunny yellers?
Yellows, they're like bursts of sunshine, warm, engaging, and always ready to tell a good story.
Storytellers, yeah.
The research highlights their optimism, their spontaneity, and ability to build relationships quickly. They're the life of the party, but they can also be a bit scattered and prone to overcommitting.
Yeah, I know a few yellows who are masters of double booking themselves. All right, now tell us about greens. They sound like kind of the calm in the storm.
Yeah, you're right about that. Greens are the steady, reliable folks who value peace and harmony above all else.
Peace and harmony.
The research describes them as a bathtub slowly filling with water.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Their anger builds slowly, but watch out when it overflows.
Oh, I can imagine. So greens are patient, but You don't want to push them too far.
Right, exactly.
Okay, finally, let's talk about those analytical blues. I'm guessing they're not the most expressive bunch.
Not always, no. So blues thrive on logic, precision,
Hmm.
and having all the facts before making a decision.
All the data.
Yes, all the data. The research highlights their need for accuracy, their methodical approach to problem solving, and their tendency to be more introverted.
I see. Okay. So, to recap, we've got our get it done reds, the life of the party yellows, the peacemaker greens, and the think it through blues. I'm already starting to see people I know fitting into these categories.
I know, right?
It's amazing. All right, so now that we've kind of got a basic understanding of the colors, let's move on to the really important part. How to communicate with each of these colors effectively. Because that's what we all want to know, right?
Exactly.
How to make sure our message is heard and understood, no matter who we're talking to. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after a quick break.
We will. Okay, so we've got the basics down. We know our colors.
We know our reds, yellows, greens, and blues.
Right.
Now let's get practical. How do we actually use this knowledge to become better communicators?
Yeah, because knowing the theory is one thing, but actually applying it in real-life conversations, that's where the magic happens.
That's the real test, right?
Exactly.
So, okay, let's start with those get-it-done reds.
That reds.
What are the keys to communicating with them effectively?
All right, so with reds, it's all about being direct, concise, and results-oriented.
Straight to the point.
Straight to the point.
No fluff.
No fluff, exactly. Don't waste their time with small talk.
Or long, rambling stories.
Oh, no! Get straight to the point. Emphasize the impact on the bottom line.
What's in it for them?
Yeah.
What's the ROI?
This reminds me of, there's this anecdote in the research about a red manager who was completely oblivious to an employee's burnout until he realized it was affecting sales numbers.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't care about the employee's well-being until it impacted the bottom line.
That's a classic example of how Reds prioritize outcomes above all else.
Now it comes over everything.
So when you're communicating with them, frame your message in terms of efficiency, impact, and, concrete action steps.
So instead of saying, I'm feeling overwhelmed, you would say something like, here's how we can streamline this process to boost productivity.
Speak their language.
Yes.
Speak their language.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, let's shift gears to those social butterflies. The yellows.
Yellows.
How do we navigate their world?
They're a different breed.
Completely.
What works with a red is probably going to fall flat with a yellow.
Probably backfire, honestly.
Yeah,
Oh.
with yellows. It's all about enthusiasm, engagement, and building that personal connection.
Relationship building.
Yes.
Okay.
Be warm, personable, let them share their stories.
Because yellows love to tell stories.
You do.
There's a story in the research about a yellow friend who would just dominate conversations.
Yeah.
Just wouldn't let anyone else get a word in edgewise. And the solution, gently reminding them to let others speak.
Yes. Classic yellow. Their enthusiasm can sometimes overshadow others.
It's not malicious.
No, not at all.
They just get caught up in the moment.
It's just their natural exuberance.
Exuberance. I love that word.
Right.
Okay, so clear boundaries and gentle reminders are key.
Got it. Now, how about those peace-loving greens? How do we communicate with them in a way that respects their need for harmony?
So with greens, it's crucial to be patient, supportive, and avoid creating unnecessary conflict.
They don't like drama.
They don't.
Like to keep things calm.
Exactly.
So if you need to introduce change,
which inevitably happens
do it gradually.
gradually, and explain the reasons behind it very clearly.
The why.
Yes, the why. They need time to process and adapt.
This reminds me of that story in the research about the green mom who had planned this family trip to the zoo, and then suddenly the weather changes, and I have to go to the aquarium instead.
Oh, no.
Right. Even though it's still a fun outing, this change just throws her off.
Throws her completely off balance.
Because for greens.
Routine and predictability are essential.
Got it.
Even small changes can feel disruptive.
So when communicating with greens, think slow and steady wins the race. Okay, finally, let's talk about those analytical blues. How do we get through to their logic-driven minds?
Okay, so with blues, it's all about being prepared, factual, and logical.
Data, data, data.
Yes. Skip the emotional appeals. Focus on data, evidence, well-structured arguments.
Like a lawyer presenting a case.
Exactly. They need time to process information, so don't expect an immediate decision.
Give them time to think it through.
Yes.
This is hilarious. There's a story in the research about a Blue CEO who was presented with a 35-page proposal.
Oh, wow.
And his response, yeah, can I get some more material?
Classic Blue. They crave thoroughness and accuracy.
I love it.
So when communicating with a Blue, think, show me the data.
Show me the data.
And be prepared to answer their questions with precise detail.
All the details.
All the details.
Okay, so we've covered the basics of communicating with each color.
Right.
But let's be real. People are complex.
They are.
No one is 100% red or 100% blue.
Right.
Most of us are a blend.
They're a mix.
So how do we figure out someone's dominant communication style when they're a blend of colors?
That's where observation and active listening come in. Those are your superpowers.
Superpowers, I love it.
Pay attention to how someone speaks, their body language, their tone of voice.
The whole picture.
Yes. You'll start to notice patterns that reveal their dominant color.
So we're like communication detectives.
Exactly. Looking for clues.
But in a good way.
In a good way. It's about being curious and observant, not judgmental.
Exactly.
And as you become more attuned to these nuances, you'll naturally start to adapt your communication style to create more harmonious interactions.
That makes sense. But this brings up something I've been thinking about. Doesn't all this adapting feel kind of inauthentic? Like, are we just putting on a mask to please other people?
I know what you mean. That's a valid concern. But here's the thing. Adapting your communication style doesn't mean being fake or pretending to be someone you're not. It's about being flexible and respectful of the other person's communication preferences.
So it's more like adjusting the volume and tone of your voice, depending on who you're talking to.
Exactly.
Like you wouldn't shout at a baby the same way you would shout at a football game.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's about finding that right balance between being true to yourself and being sensitive to the needs of the person you're communicating with.
And the more you practice, the more natural it becomes.
Yes, absolutely. It's like learning a new language.
It is.
At first, it feels awkward and effortful, but with time and practice, you become more fluent and confident.
More fluent and confident. And the rewards of becoming a more adaptable communicator, they're huge, right?
They are.
We're talking stronger relationships, less frustration, greater ability to get your message across.
Exactly. Imagine a world where people actually understood each other, where communication was a source of connection rather than conflict.
That would be amazing.
That's the power of understanding these colors.
I'm sold. I'm officially sold. Okay, but let's be real. We're not going to magically transform into communication gurus overnight.
Right.
So what are some practical baby steps that we can take to start putting this knowledge into practice?
So first things first, pay attention to those moments. When you feel like you're speaking different languages.
Those frustrating moments.
Yes, those moments. Instead of getting frustrated, take a step back and analyze why you're clashing with that person.
Analyze the situation.
Yes. What clues in their communication style reveal their dominant color?
Their dominant color.
And then try to adjust your approach accordingly.
So if you're dealing with a blue, resist the urge to rush them to a decision.
Exactly.
Give them the time and data they need to feel comfortable.
Exactly. Small adjustments can make a big difference.
They can.
Yeah.
And as you become more aware of these different styles, you'll naturally start to adapt.
Without even thinking about it.
It'll become second nature.
Second nature.
I like that.
Yeah.
One thing that really resonated with me is this idea that people aren't just one color.
Right.
We all have a blend.
We all have a mix.
So it's not about putting people in boxes.
No.
But rather seeing them as complex individuals.
With unique communication styles.
Unique communication styles.
Exactly.
Like we're all wearing this kaleidoscope of colors.
Ooh, I like that.
And those colors can shift depending on the situation.
It can.
Like we might be more red at work and more yellow with our friends.
Exactly.
Or more green at home.
And the more we appreciate that complexity, the more compassion and understanding we'll bring to our interactions.
That's a good point. It's about being understanding.
Yes.
Okay, before we wrap things up, I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier. The research mentioned this company party.
Oh, yeah.
Where people's communication styles were amplified or even altered by alcohol.
It's true. Liquid courage, they call it.
It got me thinking, how much do other external factors, like stress or fatigue, impact our communication styles?
That's a great question. And while the research didn't really delve into that specifically, it's definitely something to consider.
Because if you're already stressed out, You might be even more quick-tempered if you have a dominant red communication style.
Yeah, you might be more likely to snap at someone.
Exactly.
Or if you're exhausted, you might be more withdrawn and introspective if you're predominantly blue.
Like you just want to shut down and recharge. So it's
Exactly.
like those external factors can turn up the volume on certain aspects of our personality,
They can.
which means it's important to be self-aware and recognize how our internal state might be impacting our communication,
That's a good point.
and also to be compassionate with others,
Yes.
recognizing that their communication style might be influenced by factors beyond their control.
Absolutely.
We're all human.
We are.
We all have moments where we're not at our communicative best.
It's true.
The key is to approach those moments with understanding rather than judgment.
Couldn't agree more. It's about recognizing that we're all navigating this complex world of communication together. And a little bit of empathy goes a long way.
It really does. Well said. Okay, I think we've given our listener plenty to ponder.
I think so too.
But before we wrap things up completely, I have one final thought for our listener.
All right, I'm ready.
All right, so I'm ready for that final thought.
Okay, well, I think one of the most powerful tools, and it's often overlooked, is simply asking questions.
Oh, questions.
Yeah. Instead of assuming you understand where someone's coming from, get curious.
Be curious.
Ask clarifying questions to make sure you're both on the same page.
So it's
Yeah.
like instead of just reacting to someone's communication style, you take a step back and say, hey, help me understand your perspective.
Exactly.
Okay.
And those questions can be as simple as, can you elaborate on that? Or, what's the most important thing for you in this situation?
I like that.
Yeah.
Simple and straightforward.
Yeah, and by asking those questions, you're not only gaining a deeper understanding of the other person, but you're also showing them that you genuinely value their input.
You're validating them,
Exactly.
which can go a long way in building trust and rapport.
Huge. And that's the foundation of any healthy relationship, whether it's personal or professional.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This also reminds me of something we talked about earlier, paying attention to body language.
Oh, yes.
It's like there's this whole other conversation happening beneath the surface of our words.
Absolutely. All those nonverbal cues can be incredibly revealing.
So if we can learn to read those signals, we can gain a much richer understanding of how someone's really feeling.
The research highlights some key things to watch for: eye contact, posture, hand gestures.
Oh, interesting.
Like, for example, if someone is avoiding eye contact, it could signal nervousness or discomfort.
Makes sense.
Or if someone's constantly fidgeting, it could indicate boredom or impatience.
So those nonverbal cues can often be more telling than the words themselves.
I really can.
It's about paying attention to the whole picture,
The whole picture, yes.
not just what's being said verbally.
Exact.
Okay, so we've got asking questions, observing body language. What other nuggets of wisdom can we leave our listener with?
I think it's crucial to emphasize that this isn't about manipulating people or trying to, force them into a certain communication style.
Right, we're not trying to become communication puppeteers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about understanding and respecting different approaches so that we can all feel heard and understood.
Everyone wants to feel heard and understood.
Exactly.
And it's also about recognizing that everyone
Regardless of their communication style.
has something valuable to contribute.
Absolutely. Diversity is what makes life interesting. And teams more effective.
I love that.
So let's celebrate those differences and use this knowledge to create a more understanding and connected world.
Beautiful. I love that.
Yeah.
And it brings us back to the beginning of this deep dive, that feeling of being surrounded by idiots. But maybe those idiots aren't actually idiots at all. Maybe they're just communicating in a language we haven't learned to understand yet.
And the good news is we all have the capacity to learn that language. It just takes a little effort, an open mind, and a willingness to step outside our own communication comfort zones.
Well said. And on that note, I think we've given our listener plenty to chew on, so go forth and embrace the colorful world of human communication. And remember, the next time you encounter someone who seems like an idiot, take a deep breath, ask some questions, and see if you can crack the code of their communication style. You might be surprised at what you discover.